Hi guys, I'm Charlie Book Fanatic. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to recommend you some big books. And with big books, I mean books over 500 pages. The topic for these recommendations come from a Goodreads group called Monthly Recommendations. I will link it down below if you're interested in participating in this Goodreads group. The first book I want to recommend to you is a very popular one, and that is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. Jane Austen is obviously a very popular author, but this is one of her lesser known works, and in my opinion, it's one of her better works. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Not really the first part of it, because it's mostly about a play that the characters in this book are going to perform, and I was quite bored with that, but the dramatics between these characters and the relationships and the symbolism in it was so great, and I really enjoyed this novel, and I am very happy that I've read all of Jane Austen's novels and they all turn out to be so great. I could really recommend all of her books basically, but if you want a bigger one, this one is over 500 pages, then I would really recommend this one. This book is about Fanny. She is a very peculiar main character because she is passive, and most of Jane Austen's main characters, they're all female, are active main characters, but Fanny is more of an onlooker in the lives of the other characters than anything else. She is very shy, she doesn't talk a lot, so you really see what happens between all of these other characters, but Fanny is more of an outsider, and I actually really like that. The next book I want to recommend to you is one of my all-time favorites, and that is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I've read this book 2 times now, and I've looked through it multiple times, and I absolutely adore this one. This book is made up out of, obviously, text, but also documents like pictures. Like, you can see it right here. It's kind of made up like Illuminate, but it's mostly text though. It's not made up out of documents entirely, but it is very enjoyable to have a different kind of formatting. This book is a thriller, and it's one of the first thrillers I have ever read, and I have to say that I really enjoyed this one. There's another thriller on this list that I really enjoyed. See how Marisha Pessl drew inspiration from the other book I'm going to talk about in a moment, and I find it funny how I see a particular pattern in myself with the kind of thrillers I like. This is about a investigative journalist called Scott McGrath who gets obsessed with this filmmaker Cordova. He's trying to find out what the history is behind Cordova, because Cordova has disappeared. It has been said that he lives on this estate and he never ventures out, and Scott McGrath is going to look into this estate and into the murder of Cordova's daughter. Scott was obsessed with Cordova once, but he abandoned the case because he lost his wife and his daughter because of it, and eventually Cordova's daughter gets murdered, and Scott McGrath gets into this case all over again alongside 2 of the side characters called Nora and Hopper. And I find it particularly funny because I wanted to say Bunny, because Hopper, Bunny, you know, but Bunny is actually the name of one of the most important characters in the other thriller I'm going to talk about in a moment. So, you know, I see the kind of parallels between it, but I really enjoyed this story and I will forever recommend this one because it is so good. Let's talk about the other mystery thriller I want to talk about, and that's A Secret History by Donna Tartt. I read this one a while ago and I've never reread it since, but this is one of those books that I wasn't sure what to think about while I was reading it and experiencing it, but when I finished reading it and started thinking about it, I realized how deeply invested I was in this story. To this day, I think I read it back in 2014. To this day, I am still thinking about the story and it still stayed with me. It's about this character that gets into this group of friends who all have their secrets and mysteries, and it's written in such an enthralling and mysterious way that you really want to figure out what it is with all of these characters. And they're all in this Latin class, and it all seems to be one big conspiracy, and eventually it gets all out of hand, and I absolutely loved how Donna Tartt managed to create the atmosphere in this book. I want to mention 2 very popular books. And the first one is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. I think everyone has heard about it now. I've read the first 2 books in the Mistborn trilogy, and I particularly enjoyed the first one, The Final Empire, because of the plot twist it had in it that I really didn't see coming. The second book I wasn't a huge fan of because it was a lot of politics and a bit too much for my liking, but if you're into politics, I would really recommend this story because it has a lot of it. The Final Empire is about this main character called Vin and Kelsia, who get into this rebellion to to try and overthrow the emperor. And that's basically what the whole first book consists of, and I really enjoyed it and want to continue on with the second book in the series, which is also a big book, but I enjoyed that one much less because I am not that much of a politics reader, apparently. And our last book is not a favourite of mine, but it is the fourth book in the Throne of Glass series, Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. I obviously can't say anything much about it because it is the fourth book, but this series is about an assassin called Selena Sadothian, and it follows her being brought from the slave camp to the castle to perform in a competition to become the king's champion, to become the king's assassin, and gets freed from this slave camp and eventually earn her freedom. I believe she has to serve the king for 5 years and then she gets her freedom back. I'm not a huge fan of the Throne of Glass series, and I don't think I ever will be. From the fourth book on, Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms, which I'm currently reading, I'm literally almost done with it. I have 20 pages left. I started enjoying it. I started liking it. I do see the problematic things in it still. I still get quite frustrated with things that are happening in this book, but I am very curious as to how this whole series is going to end in the next and final installment in this series. And I've come so far, I feel like I have to finish this series, and everyone on booktube basically loves this series and has this whole series behind them on their bookshelves. So I thought I would include this in here because I did start enjoying it after book 4. It's basically encouragement to push through even if you didn't like the first 3 books. And if you don't want to do that, I get that as well. I am just crazy and I really liked hate reading this series until book 4, and I started liking it after that because I feel like book 2 and book 3 were mostly filler books for this series, so I was so bored during the second and third book. But then things really started happening in book 4 and I just want to finish it now. So these were my recommendations for this month. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you have any recommendations for me in terms of big books, or if you have read any of the books I just mentioned and what you think about them. I would love to discuss. Thank you for watching. Goodbye!